Hi guys, so one thing that we get asked a lot of questions about lately, because we've been talking about it on some of our videos, is basically thyroid hormone function. So most of us are slightly aware of the kind of role of thyroid hormones because they are implicated in our metabolism, and specifically the kind of speed at which our metabolism can run. So for those of you out there with a weight loss goal, this might be something that you've kind of looked into or you're slightly curious about. Maybe you've been to your GP because you've had some issues losing weight, maybe some other symptoms of low thyroid function. Just a couple. I'm not a big fan of symptom lists because there can be so many different things, but a couple of things that I tend to look for when I'm working with clients would be generally kind of slow function in every system in the body. So it could be sluggish digestion, which might mean that you end up with things like constipation and some other kind of issues with irritable bowel syndrome. It could be kind of slow function of your brain cells, so we get brain fog, maybe kind of even at its worst, depression. The cells can't regenerate and repair, so we tend to have things like slow healing of the body if you kind of cut yourself, or kind of the nails don't grow, your skin doesn't kind of look too good, look too healthy, maybe hair's falling out, the loss of half the eyebrow is thought to be related to thyroid hormone conditions. So generally, if kind of things just don't seem to be working, and of course fatigue and no energy is an obvious factor. So if you have those symptoms, you may go to your GP and get your thyroid hormones tested. Sometimes that will flag something up, but sometimes you'll be told, actually, you're in the healthy reference range, kind of tootle off and maybe given some kind of solution. Sometimes it's things like antidepressants or something to tackle one of your symptoms. So what you really need to know is that test really doesn't give you a kind of comprehensive picture of all of the thyroid hormones. So I'm going to talk you through how the thyroid hormones actually operate around the body and give you an idea about what their function is, what nutrients we need to basically make sure we've got those raw ingredients for thyroid hormones and for the conversions that take place, and anything that might inhibit thyroid hormone function. So firstly, you can kind of take the information and review your lifestyle, your nutrition, but secondly, you might want to kind of go and speak to your GP about further testing options, maybe look at private testing instead. So we're going to kick off by understanding thyroid hormones a little bit better. We have a little whiteboard here, so you can see, first of all, thyroid hormones generally start off in the brain. So we have something called thyroid stimulating hormone. It's produced up here by a pituitary gland, which is also kind of taking messages from another gland in the brain, the master gland, hypothalamus, which is kind of reading the situation, everything from the outside environment to the internal environment of the body. So we start off with TSH, and this is what your GP will generally measure, and they have a reference range. It's actually different in every single country, not every single, most countries it's different. I like to see it kind of around 2, maybe just slightly below, in terms of what I'm looking for, but actually a GP reference range can be anywhere between 3, 5, 12 depending on the country that you're in. So it just goes to show some of these reference ranges are based on unhealthy populations, because that's who visits the GP, so it's not necessarily a good indicator. So I like to see TSH around 2. Now what TSH does is the TSH is produced in the brain and it speaks to the thyroid gland, and you can see that's here, located in the neck. And the thyroid gland here is basically responsible for producing thyroid hormones, but specifically you can see here I've done a little arrow coming out, so we get T4 and T3 being produced by the thyroid gland. Now the first point that I want you to understand is that thyroid hormones themselves are made of things. They're actually made of tyrosine and iodine. So tyrosine is the protein, iodine is a mineral that we get from things like seafood and seaweeds. Actually most people are very deficient nowadays. We don't eat enough foods with iodine in on a daily basis. Tyrosine we get from things like meat, fish, eggs. So again, you could look at your nutrition, whether you're eating tyrosine-rich foods. That would be really helpful. Next thing to know, so most of the thyroid hormones is actually in the form of T4, and this is called thyroxine, and it's bound up, it's not in its active form, and the reason being, thyroid hormones act on every single cell in the body. So you can imagine they're being released here, and they might start acting just on every single cell they come across. So it has to be bound up, and it has to be basically kind of piled into a taxi and taken off around the body so that it can reach all the cells and help all the cells do their jobs, do their function. So it gets put in a taxi called thyroid binding globulin. So it's proteins, by the way. We think of protein for muscle mass, but proteins do so many other things. And one thing that they do is they're kind of transport mechanisms. They are the taxis. They kind of latch onto various different hormones and carry them around the body. So a lot of it is moving around the body in its little protein taxi. And actually, in the liver here is where we get most of our conversions. So a lot of the thyroid hormones are taken to the liver in its kind of bound form as T4. It's not active yet, and this is where it can be made active by the liver. But the liver requires an enzyme for this process, and that enzyme is selenium dependent. So selenium is another mineral that we need to have good amounts of, and most of us again are deficient. Most of us think that eating 2 Brazil nuts a day will meet our selenium needs, but it doesn't necessarily. So again, go away, look at things like fish and seafood, rich sources of selenium. There are obviously some in Brazil nuts, but some of you may need to supplement again if you have a deficiency. So in the liver, the thyroid hormone is bound, but it can be converted into T3, which is the active form, or it can be converted into reverse T3. So where T3 is kind of like the accelerator pedal on a cell, it kind of goes in and says, right, let's do this, let's get the job done, kind of allows it, fuels it to do its thing. Reverse T3 is the opposite, it's the brakes on the cell doing its thing. So it's the brakes on your metabolism. And what the body does at this stage is kind of work out whether you've got enough fuel for a start to kind of do all the metabolic things that we need to do. And if you haven't, because maybe you're on a really low calorie diet, this is where low calorie diets can actually really hinder thyroid function, it will convert the thyroid hormone into reverse T3. And what that does is kind of latch onto the cell where T3 would do its work and stop T3 making that cell do its thing. So it kind of blocks, it's an inhibitor basically, it blocks the action of thyroid hormone. But if we get free T3 going around the body, that actually goes over to a cell. So this cell here can be any cell in the body. It could be a cell in the digestive system. It could be a neuron, so that's a brain cell. It could be a muscle cell. And T3 comes along, and it's really special. So most hormones can only attach to a receptor site, like a little satellite dish. Don't you see that, guys? I'm not even showing you guys. Most hormones have to go to a receptor site outside the cell. They're not allowed in. So this is insulin and the sex hormones, all the other hormones. But T3 is really special. It gets to go across the cell membrane and into the cell, and actually there's a receptor site on the nucleus, and what I call the nucleus, for most people, when I'm doing my talks, I kind of explain the nucleus is kind of like the chief executive of a cell. It knows everything that needs to be done, and it has all the instructions in its head, but it kind of needs a signal from T3 to basically do its thing. It needs some energy as well. That's another webinar. But it needs a number of things. It needs the help of T3, and then what it does is it basically starts spouting out instructions to the ribosomes, and they start kind of making proteins, and then obviously loads of different functions in the body can take place. So T3 goes into the cell. Vitamin A is really important for this process because vitamin A is basically kind of part of the receptor on the nucleus. So we need to have good levels of vitamin A. Now vitamin A obviously is very rich in animal products, but some people ethically might want to avoid them, or maybe thinking that you're avoiding them for dietary reasons, to lose weight, to be healthy, whatever it might be. But it is a nutrient that we need. We can get it from beta carotene, which is in things like carrots, basically kind of orange vegetables will offer us a beta carotene, which is then converted into vitamin A. But some of us actually genetically aren't very good at that. So again, if you eat a lot of carrots and get a slightly orange tinge to your hands, it's believed that you maybe you're not converting it into vitamin A very effectively. So some people do need to have some animal products. They feel better, and again, it supports thyroid function. So the reason I'm telling you all this is one, so we've already got a collection of nutrients. I'm just going to pop this down for a second. And some things that can really hinder thyroid function because it's starting in the brain. Anything that kind of crosses the brain barrier and starts to impact the function of the pituitary gland, so this goes for things like reproductive hormones as well, is going to have an impact on thyroid hormone production. So that is anything from kind of inflammation. If you have infections in the gut, they kind of have a nasty byproduct called lipopolysaccharides, which pass over into the body, into the bloodstream, and can wreak havoc. And that's right into kind of the brain and stop those kind of glands being able to produce the hormones. Also, we have things like environmental toxins, so things like mercury. Fluoride is another one that's looked at a lot with thyroid hormones. It can actually start to kind of block those conversions, or again just create kind of a low-grade inflammatory response and issues with all of the cells in the body kind of getting damaged. So these are things that might affect that process that I've just walked you through from taking place. So what you guys can do, first of all, is make sure that you're eating the nutrients that we've just mentioned. We had iodine, tyrosine, selenium, vitamin A. Vitamin D also plays a role. Zinc is also very important. Zinc and B6 are kind of important for lots of things in the body, so I have to make sure people have got good intakes of these within their diet. If you do go to your GP, what you're going to come away with is probably TSH and maybe total T4. And those two alone, as you can see, don't really give you the picture, because maybe your thyroid hormones aren't converting at certain places. Maybe you don't have enough free T3. Maybe you have too much reverse T3. Maybe there's too much kind of the binding proteins that have kind of caught up the thyroid hormones and they're not able to do their job and act on the cells. So there are other things. The most common thing that I see at the moment is something known as Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition where actually the immune system has started to attack the thyroid gland. So we tend to see low levels of T4 and actually very high levels of TSH, because what the brain is doing is it's getting some feedback that there's no thyroid hormones operating around the body, and it starts pumping out thyroid stimulating hormone even higher. So once we're getting it coming over 3, I've seen it up at kind of 10, 12, some even higher, then we know that something is going wrong and we need to kind of intervene. So a GP will offer you usually thyroxine, which is a form of, basically it's just hormone replacement therapy. And in some cases it's absolutely essential, it makes people feel better. But what I would say is in the background, you have to go away and look at what is it that was causing the problem? Where does the problem lie? Is it in a conversion? Is it in a production issue? Is there an infection? Is it autoimmune related? Your doctor can actually test antibodies towards the thyroid gland. There are 3 or 4. So you might want to go back and say, it's all very well telling me I have low thyroid function if you've been diagnosed, but ask if they can check thyroid antibodies, because you can do so much with nutrition at that point in time to calm down the immune system and also work on addressing gut function. Ideally do this with somebody, with a practitioner, functional medicine, nutritional therapy. Of course you can contact us and talk about working with us. We've got some online programs like Fit16 that have elimination diets in there and are designed to basically build up your nutrient status, get rid of things that might actually kind of cause inflammation in the body and start to wreak havoc with the different systems, and again kind of look at actually just rebuilding the body, rebuild function. And lifestyle is really important for this. So we can't have high amounts of stress, we can't have too much exercise, we can't have sleep deprivation, we can't have no exercise. We've got to get that balance right so that all the different systems in the body have what they need to function. So the symptoms that we experience are basically feedback from your body, something's not working right and you need to fix it. And this is exactly what we're trying to teach people. Let's find out what's not working and basically let's fix it with a combination of food, getting to bed earlier, sleep, stress management, all those things are really, really important, and maybe nutritional supplements. So as you can see, we do need to possibly go in, have some interventions with various different nutrients to basically, almost like a catch-up phase, bring the body up to speed. And then from that point onwards, you can kind of focus on a maintenance plan. So hopefully you found this helpful. Again, do jump in the comments box if you have any questions about thyroid hormones or you've been diagnosed. You can also get in touch with us directly if you want to email info@fitfood.com, see if we can help you there. Have an awesome day. Hope you found this useful, and take care.